I was reborn. I had returned to the very day Su Wanji's father slammed a 10 million yuan check into my face. In my previous life, I tore that check to pieces. Love is priceless. But all I got in return was the contemptuous smirk on his face and the increasingly cold look in Su Wanji's eyes. For the next 10 years, I lived like dirt beneath her feet, desperately chasing after her. In the end, while protecting her at a business gala, I was stabbed to death by our enemies in a dark alley. As I lay dying, the last thing I saw was her calm, emotionless face, as if I were nothing more than a complete stranger. But this time, I refused to be the pathetic simp who lost everything for love. So instead, I calmly reached out and accepted the check. I looked up at Su Zhendong and gave him the brightest smile I could manage, one that even carried a hint of gratitude. "Thank you, uncle." My voice wasn't loud, yet it exploded through the luxurious private room like thunder. Su Zhendong had prepared countless speeches to persuade me, but every single word got stuck in his throat. The authority on his face instantly turned into confusion. He had probably imagined 100 different ways I'd refuse the money, but never once expected me to thank him with a smile. The mocking grin on Long Outyan's face froze instantly, like a duck whose neck had suddenly been squeezed. As for Su Wanji, the icy goddess who always looked down on everyone and never revealed her emotions, for the first time, a crack appeared in her frozen expression. Her pupils narrowed slightly. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I carefully folded the check and slipped it into the faded pocket of my worn-out jeans. Then I stood up and gave Su Zhendong a respectful nod. "Don't worry, uncle. Starting today, I will never bother Miss Su Wanji again." Then I turned toward her. "I'm sorry for disturbing you over the past 3 years. I sincerely wish you a bright future and a smooth road ahead." Su Wanji's body trembled almost imperceptibly. For the first time, she truly looked at me. The coldness in her beautiful eyes had disappeared. In its place was pure disbelief. Before she could say anything, I had already turned to leave. "Chen Ping'an, I thought you had some pride. So in the end, you're just another spineless loser blinded by money. You sold 10 years of love for 10 million. You're truly pathetic." My footsteps paused. In my previous life, those exact words had driven me completely insane. I charged at him in rage, only to be beaten half to death by the bodyguards before being thrown out in humiliation. But this time, I simply turned around and looked at him calmly. There was no anger in my eyes, only pity. "Young Master Zhao, you're mistaken. First, it wasn't 10 years. It was only 3. Second, it wasn't love. It was nothing more than my one-sided obsession. And third, I didn't sell anything. This is simply Chairman Su's reasonable compensation for the time and effort I invested over the past 3 years. After all, being a loyal simp takes plenty of time and energy. So this 10 million is neither too much nor too little. It's just right." I pulled open the heavy wooden door of the private room and walked away without looking back. Behind me, silence. When I stepped outside the hotel, the afternoon sunlight stung my eyes. I took the check out of my pocket, looking at that unbelievable string of zeros. I almost wanted to cry. To hell with love. To hell with pride. I've been given a second chance at life. In this life, I won't love anyone. I'll only love money. I didn't rush to cash the check. An old fox like Su Zhendong would never hand over 10 million so easily. He could have placed restrictions on the check. Or maybe it wasn't even valid. Perhaps he was simply waiting to watch me embarrass myself. What a clever move, Su Zhendong. I hailed a taxi and returned to my tiny rental room in the city's old neighborhood. The room was less than 100 square feet. Dark, damp. The air smelled like instant noodles mixed with mold. This was the place I'd stubbornly rented for 3 years in my previous life, just so I could live closer to Su Wanji's university. I turned on my old laptop. It was already 5 years old. The screen froze for several seconds before finally lighting up. I didn't rush to do anything. Instead, I leaned back in my chair and quietly organized my thoughts. Having a second chance at life. What was my greatest advantage? Information. I knew exactly how the economy would develop over the next 10 years. I knew which stocks would skyrocket and which industries would dominate the future. I opened my trading software and confidently typed in one stock. Tengfei Technology. I remembered it perfectly. Tomorrow, this unknown little company would announce a revolutionary chip patent. Its stock price would double overnight, from 5 yuan to 10. I picked up my phone and dialed Su Wanji's number. "Everything you left at my place has been packed and placed outside my door. You can send someone to pick it up anytime. And one more thing, I've changed my phone number. We'll never need to contact each other again." Before she could respond, I hung up, pulled out the SIM card, snapped it in half, and threw it into the trash. For the first time in years, my world finally became quiet. The next morning, I headed straight to the bank. To my surprise, cashing the check went incredibly smoothly. Only when my phone notified me that my account balance had increased by a long string of zeros did I truly believe my life had finally begun again. Without a second thought, I transferred 9.9 million yuan into my brokerage account and invested every cent in Tongfei technology. As I walked out of the brokerage office, I felt lighter than ever before. Now, all I had to do was wait. I never returned to that damp, moldy apartment. Instead, I checked into the finest hotel in the city and booked an executive suite. Soaking in a hot bathtub with a glass of chilled champagne in hand, I gazed out at the dazzling skyline beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. For a moment, it all felt unreal. In my previous life, I could only stand outside hotels like this, staring up at the lights on the top floors, imagining the glamorous parties Su Wanji attended inside. Now, I was the one inside. Ding. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unfamiliar number. It was Su Wanji. Chen Ping'an, where are you? Did you really throw away everything I gave you? She had clearly gone through a lot of effort to find my new number. The gifts she gave me were nothing more than things she didn't want anymore. A pen, a notebook. Every time she handed them to me, it felt like she was tossing scraps to a beggar. Yet back then, I treasured every single one as if it were priceless. This time, I didn't reply. I blocked the number immediately. Then I called room service. Hello, I'd like to book 2 professional massage therapists. In this life, I was finally going to treat myself the way I deserved. For the next week, I lived the life I had always dreamed of. Every morning, I woke up naturally without an alarm. I enjoyed exquisite breakfasts at the hotel's rooftop restaurant. In the afternoons, I spent my time at the gym or relaxing by the pool. At night, I experienced the city's most luxurious nightlife. I replaced my cheap clothes and faded jeans with tailored suits. The saying was true. Clothes really do make the man. Wearing a perfectly fitted suit with a Patek Philippe on my wrist. Every luxury venue welcomed me with warm smiles and impeccable service. Gone were the judgmental stares and looks of contempt. Money really was a man's greatest source of confidence. As for my Tongfei technology shares, I barely even checked them. I already knew they would keep rising. One evening, I invited 2 stunning models to drink with me at Cloud Palace, the city's most exclusive private club. The music thundered through the room. Crowds swayed beneath dazzling lights. The air itself smelled of wealth and desire. In my previous life, I wasn't even qualified to step through these doors. Now, I occupied the best VIP table in the entire club, drawing attention from every direction. Mr. Chun, another drink? One of the models leaned against me with a sweet smile. I smiled back and gently pinched her cheek. Before I could answer, a familiar figure entered my field of vision. Su Wanji. Why was she here? Walking beside her was Long Outyin, along with several wealthy young heirs I didn't recognize. Long Outyin was loudly bragging about something. Meanwhile, Su Wanji remained as cold and elegant as ever, completely out of place amid the noisy crowd. Then, she noticed me. The moment our eyes met, surprise flashed across her face. Then confusion. And finally, disgust. Yes, disgust. In her eyes, I was nothing more than a man who had taken her father's money and was now wasting it on luxury and pleasure. Nothing but trash. Following her gaze, Long Outyin looked over as well. A mocking grin immediately spread across his face. Pushing through the crowd, he strode straight toward me. Well, if it isn't the famous Chen Ping'an, the hopeless romantic himself. He deliberately raised his voice so everyone nearby could hear. So, you're spending the 10 million Uncle Su gave you, huh? Feeling like you finally made it in life? The rich kids behind him burst into laughter. So this is the legendary simp you were talking about? He doesn't look like much. Sold himself for 10 million. What an embarrassment to men. The 2 models beside me looked uncomfortable and started to stand. I gently stopped them. No need. I calmly picked up my whiskey, swirling the amber liquid inside the glass. Without even looking at Long Outyin, I spoke casually. Young Master Long, how's your family's business these days? I heard several overseas projects at the Long Group have run into serious trouble. His smile immediately faded. What nonsense are you talking about? I took another sip of whiskey. The Southeast Asian Port Project. It was practically frozen after the local policy changes. And your European semiconductor distribution rights. Weren't they snatched away by Bearstone Capital? Those 2 deals alone must have cost your family at least 200 million yuan. Everything I said came straight from financial news I remembered from my previous life. The color drained from Long Outyin's face. Those were company secrets. Only the board of directors knew about them. How could I possibly know? You. How do you know all that? Were you spying on me? I slowly set my glass down. For the first time, I looked him directly in the eyes. Young Master Long, you think far too highly of yourself. You're simply not important enough for me to investigate. I stood up, half a head taller than him. looking down at him with nothing but contempt. Maybe spend less time acting like a rabid dog, and more time cleaning up your own mess. The laughter around us slowly died away. Everyone sensed that the atmosphere had changed. Long Outyin opened his mouth to respond, but not a single word came out. His face shifted between red and pale. He looked utterly humiliated. I didn't bother saying another word to him. Instead, I pulled a thick stack of cash from my wallet and placed it on the table. Ladies, thanks for keeping me company tonight. Take a taxi home safely. After straightening my suit jacket, I walked past Long Outyin without giving him another glance. As I passed Su Wanji, I paused for just a moment. She stared at me in silence. The shock in her eyes was even greater than it had been the day we met in that private room. She simply couldn't understand it. How had the poor young man who used to humble himself before her only a few days ago become someone so unfamiliar, so confident, so sharp? A faint smile curled across my lips. Miss Su, you should really learn to judge people more carefully. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving behind nothing but my back and a room full of stunned faces. You were never beyond my reach. I simply don't care to look up at you anymore. After leaving the club, I didn't return to the hotel. Instead, I drove straight to the airport. Yunqing held far too many painful memories from my previous life. Now that I had earned my first fortune, it was time to begin a new life somewhere else. My flight took off just before dawn. My destination, Shanghai, a city overflowing with opportunity and endless possibilities. I switched off my phone and leaned back into the comfortable first-class seat. Before long, I fell into a deep sleep. When I opened my eyes again, the plane had already landed at Pudong International Airport. Walking out of the terminal and breathing in the city's familiar air, I felt like a completely different person, a man reborn. I didn't rush to buy a house. Instead, I rented a luxury serviced apartment overlooking the Huangpu River. Standing before the floor-to-ceiling windows, I admired the breathtaking night view of the Bund. I knew this was where I truly belonged. This would be my stage. The next morning, shortly after the stock market opened, my investment manager called. His voice was trembling with excitement. Mr. Chen, Tengfei Technology hit the daily limit. I simply smiled. Keep holding. Don't sell a single share until it reaches 150 yuan. After hanging up, I began planning my next move. Making money from stocks was fast, but it wasn't a lasting foundation. I wanted to build an empire. Thanks to the memories from my previous life, I already knew which industries would dominate the coming years. Internet healthcare, new energy vehicles, artificial intelligence. Those would become the 3 greatest opportunities of the decade. Over the next week, I poured all my energy into writing a detailed business plan. I was going to establish my own investment company, a company dedicated to discovering and investing in promising startups before anyone else recognized their value. 1 month later, everything happened exactly as I remembered. Tengfei Technology's stock price surged all the way to 150 yuan. My investment had grown from 9.9 million yuan to an astonishing 300 million yuan. Without hesitation, I sold every share. Taking profits was always the smartest move. With that capital, Dynasty Capital was officially founded in Shanghai. Its headquarters occupied the top floor of the Shanghai World Financial Center in Lujiazui, standing proudly across the river from the Oriental Pearl Tower. I spared no expense recruiting talent, offering salaries far above the industry standard. I hired the best analysts and traders from major investment banks. At first, those elite professionals looked down on me. To them, I was nothing more than an inexperienced young man barely in his 20s. But after I accurately predicted 3 major U.S. stock market crashes and led them to earn $50 million in a single day by short selling, every doubt disappeared. The way they looked at me changed. First, curiosity. Then, respect. Finally, absolute admiration. To them, I wasn't just their boss anymore. I was a miracle. As my business expanded, life became increasingly busy. Endless meetings, countless reports, an endless stream of clients and partners. Gradually, I forgot about Yunqing, forgot about Su Wanji, forgot about the painful past that had once consumed my life. Until one day, my secretary placed an invitation on my desk. Mr. Chen, next week, Shenzhen Convention Center will host an international business summit. This invitation came directly from the organizers. I casually glanced through it, but when my eyes landed on one of the co-organizers, my fingers paused. The Su Group. They really were impossible to avoid. Decline it. My secretary hesitated. Mr. Chen, this summit is extremely prestigious. Nearly half of the Fortune Global 500 companies will be attending. And Mr. Li, the event's organizer, specifically requested your presence. Mr. Li? He was the son of Hong Kong's richest man and the founder of this summit. In my previous life, I'd only ever seen him in the news. Now, he was personally inviting me. It seemed Dynasty Capital had already made quite a name for itself. I thought for a moment, then smiled. Fine, I'll go. I'd love to see the expressions on the Su family's faces when we meet again.